Hello. So, is extroverted feeling fake? Is FE fake? If anyone thinks that it is, please respond. Or if anyone has ever thought it was, or even if you think it seems fake or whatever, I was going to just film a video, but then I was thinking about that I think that going live will make a bigger impact because I really want to deconstruct everything that people might be assuming about this stereotype of extroverted feeling being fake. And if you want to know how intentional extroverted feeling actually is, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do my hair. I got to do whatever for this video, or I got to decide what I'm wearing today. And then I was like, you know what? No, because I want to look like a mess so that I'm more relatable. These are the things that extroverted feeling will think of. These are the things that extroverted feeling or ENFJs will think of intentionally. I'll be like, you know what sort of emotional environment am I wanting to create? And I'm trying to establish a rapport. This is a conversation. I don't want to be just some chick in your screen telling you how it is, even though that is kind of what I am. Hi, everyone. So my introverted thinking does not understand what a mukbang is or a mukbang, but my introverted thinking thinks that I only have so much time in the day and I want to talk to you and I want to eat. And so that's what I'm doing. Anyway, so you probably have heard before that extroverted feeling is fake. And I think that it's a lot of times introverted feelers that say that about extroverted feeling because they don't see the root of it. So what happens is that introverted feelers, they don't value TI, especially FPs, whenever they have EFPs have a introverted thinking blind spot. And so whenever they look at our extroverted feeling, they can't see the root of our behavior. And that is because the root of an extroverted feeling behavior is introverted thinking. And so when an FP sees the behavior of an FJ, they're going to be confused because they aren't going to be able to pinpoint the root that they're looking for, because the root is often on a principle and not a value. So what is the difference of a value and a principle? Well, a principle is something that is more logical in that you apply no matter what you feel about it. And all introverted thinkers do this. And if you're looking at an FJ, a lot of times their principles are geared toward doing the right thing for the group. And even though it might seem like it's emotional, it is emotional, it's not non-emotional, the root of it is logical. The root of it is, I think that it's the right thing to do to see through my commitments, and I think it's the right thing to do to communicate with people, or I think it's the right thing to do to be honest with people. I think it's the right thing to do to say please and thank you, or show my manners or anything like that. So somebody comments and said, in a sense, yes, FE is fake since FI is authentic. So I don't believe in that. I'm not sure what the origin of that is, where people started to say that FI is authentic. If anyone knows the origin of that, let me know. I don't know if it's personality hacker. I don't know what it is, but I'd like to deconstruct that as well, because anyone who is using their dominant function in a way that is honest to them is being authentic. And FI is not always authentic. I know several FI users who have been inauthentic and said things in order to sort of please their FI ulterior motive. They could say things in the TE that are fake in order to, please their FI. So I think authentic is just sort of the wrong word to use. Although for individuals who prefer FI and who use FI, like I just got a comment that said, INFP is FI hero and are very concerned with being authentic. I do agree that many INFPs are concerned with being authentic, but I don't think that FI equals authentic. I think that the reason why so many INFPs care about being authentic is because they have such a deep look at who they are as a person and as an individual. And I think that when anyone takes such a deep look, which is what introverted feeling is, deep, intense dive into your values and who you are as a person, when you are doing that, it's going to be hard for anyone to want to just, have shitty values or like be a shitty person. Because if an INFP wrongs you or does something against their values, they're the ones that are going to have to sit with their FI the rest of their life and feel like shit. Like an INFP will stick to their values because they are so up close and personal with their values and their authenticity at all times that they know that it's going to be pretty much hurting themselves if they hurt you, because they're going to have to sit with how uncomfortable that feels to go against their values. It's the same way that introverted thinkers feel terrible about being hypocritical. Like I see TJs and FPs contradict themselves all the time. They will say they stand by one fact and then say they'll stand by another fact. I see a lot of this in politics where they will like criticize one party for doing something, but then not criticize their own party for doing that same thing. And from a TIFE point of view, it's like you're being hypocritical. Either get rid of the principle altogether or support the principle altogether. But FI will look at that and think, they aren't looking at the principles. And so they might slip up on their principles. They might need a TI user to let them know what is incorrect about the principle or like what maybe they missed. But what I see FE users and TI users missing all of the time in politics is not the principles, but perhaps they don't like that Trump calls people names, but then they have the audacity to call Trump a name. That is like sort of going against their like FI values of whether or not they think it's right or they would feel okay personally with calling someone a name or whatever. I think that FE users are more lenient with their emotional expression or their morals because they are so focused, FE and TI is so focused on not being hypocritical and making sure that their principles are intact and that the truth is intact and that they don't want to feel like a hypocrite because they're going to have to be the ones to sleep at night and think about how hypocritical they are. When they're alone, whether you're an extrovert, an introvert, an FJ or a TP, anyone, ENFJ, ESFJ, ISFJ, INFJ, INTP, ISTP, ESTP, ENTP, all of those types, when they're alone with their thoughts, they know how hypocritical they've been. They are refining their logic. They are thinking about those things. And any FI user is going to be thinking about, they're going to be feeling whether their actions sat right with them, whether they felt okay, whether they'd stand by the character that they have done. And so that's why people say that FI is authentic, because in an emotional sense, they have more reasons to lend them to care about being authentic. But that doesn't mean that all FI users are authentic, because there have been so many FI users in history and in real life now that have shitty values. And, there have been lots of TI users that are biased as hell and like say things that just don't make sense. So yes, someone says FE values social harmony, which overrides individualization. So yes, it does override individualism. But why is that fake is what I want to know. So yes, Tom, who's an INFP, says that it feels shitty when I'm inauthentic with my self-expression. It almost feels like physical pain. Yes, exactly. That's how it feels to be an FI dominant, I don't know, and to sit with yourself after maybe you did something that was against your value. And a TI dominant, if they said something that they know wasn't true, they're gonna feel like pain too if they go against that. And so every EJ that you see is going to be a little bit out of touch with this individual function, which is either FI or TI, sort of keeping them in check and making sure that they are aligned, because EJs are so focused on moving things forward. So I think that is another reason why that's another reason why people think that extroverted feeling is fake, because we're so focused on moving things along and doing what the group needs now that it can be hard to trace the FI user's values and FE user's value. And if you ask an extroverted feeler, what are your core values? They might not be able to answer. They might have to really think through what that means. What would it look like if my hair was lilac? I don't think I'm that bold, to be very honest. I'm reading this comment. Okay. This is a great thing to address. Kenny says, Kenny, what is your type, by the way? I think you might be an NTP or an NTJ. I forget. I don't know. That's another weird, FE thing for me. FE in action is that any of you guys comment, I want to feel like I know you individually. I want to feel like I know who you are, like what your type is. And I try and remember those things. And I feel like I have a very intense, expansive capacity for those sort of things. Like when I was in high school, I knew everyone's name. And I went to school with 2,000 people. I think since ENFJs are so tribe-minded, scientific studies have shown that most humans can really only handle groups of about 100 to 150, 200 before they begin to lose sight of each individual and they begin to not know people's names, not know people's faces, those sort of things. Our minds and our memories only has so much capacity for those sort of things. But I feel like for me, I have a greater capacity than most people. And I would venture to say that many ENFJ or ESFJs would feel similarly to me. I don't know. I just feel like I have a very expansive view in that way. But yeah, I have noticed that an FI users tend to dye their hair because they're or they sort of want to be oh, look at me, I'm quirky, oh, I want to be different or something. And I actually have talked about this before, which is kind of FE, is the reason why I would not dye my hair a color like this is because I feel like I have so many aspects of who I am and I can get along with so many different types of people that I would hate for someone to have an incorrect perception of me or not think that I'm open-minded just because of how I seem. And I think that's why for me, I really want to seem like the sort of person that can get along with anyone, which kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about FE might seem fake, but I feel like there are so many depths to who I am. If I dyed my hair purple, what would somebody who is more conservative or more traditional think of me? Would they just see me and instantly sum me up as you know, someone that, you know, has tattoos or like is really not politically correct. I don't know what people think about when they think about people with colored hair. I don't judge people, so I don't know. But the fact is, people do judge people. That's also FE in action right now. I know that people do judge people with a different color hair. I don't know what they judge. I don't personally judge. I just can sense that they do. And I feel like I like to sort of mold myself to whatever I relate to. I like look for the common ground, and I try and notice what I could relate to with people. And so I would hate to like isolate myself from a group of people by like standing by one specific quality in me whenever there are so many qualities in me. So that's another FE sort of thing, is like, I think almost like FI users do like dye their hair, or like do some, like even if an FE user does it, I think that people like dye their hair, like have a septum piercing or like anything like this to sort of like weed out the people that are going to be closed-minded. And I think that I don't do those things because in general, I don't like to weed people out. And maybe that makes me not authentic from an FI point of view. I don't really stand by any sort of specific individual trait in me because I view myself and society as expansive and vast, and I could be whatever I want to be. I think that's FE. So anyway, so okay. Kenny was saying that his biggest gripe with FE is that they're super helping, but they shit talk people behind people's back. So the thing with me was that I would never say anything behind people's back that I would not say to their face. But that's a principle that I stand by. I don't know. I can't speak for every FE user when they do that. But I think what you're seeing is actually like both. I think that they are helping, but they also have TI opinions about who's right and who's wrong. They just don't voice those opinions unless they are prompted. And so what I think happens, and I've actually gotten into this same thing, like at like a coffee shop, for example, that I work at. I posted about this in my group, but I have sort of found that all of the NFPs have complained to me about the NTPs, and that the NTPs have complained to me about the NFPs. And I've sort of found myself like as this person that people confide in. And I've always sort of been that position where people will like tell me their opinions or like their dirty secrets or their thoughts about other people. Like they'll talk about people. And what I typically do is validate why they would feel that way. And then if the other person talks to me, I'll also validate why they would feel that way. And I understand completely why that looks really fake and two-faced. But I also don't see them as counteracting each other. Like, for example, like when an NFP tells me that the NTP at the coffee shop is super particular about things like, oh, you're not doing it right. And then the NFP is like, oh, but there was no formal training. And so how do you expect me to do it right? F you, I'm going to do it my own way. I can say to the ENFP, like, yeah, I totally understand why you would feel like that person is being like really like hypercritical of you. And I understand that that seems a little bit unnecessary. But then when the NTP talks to me and is like, oh, like, she's just annoying. She's just slow. I don't know why. And also, why does she always have to do latte art? Which I thought that was like so funny. She was like, why does she always have to do latte art? Like, I was like, yeah, I get your point. But then whenever the ENFP talks to me and is like, why is she mad that I did latte art? I'm like, yeah, I get why it's important to you to want to do latte art because you view coffee as like something that you're trying to express yourself with. And I don't see any problem with doing latte art. But then like whenever the ENTP is like, yeah, but when she does latte art all the time, then like, how are we, like, even if there's a rush, like people are going to be mad that, that we're taking so long. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, that's fair. And does this mean I'm being two-faced? I'd like to know what you guys think. I really don't think it is, because, I mean, if either one of them were to ask me my thoughts, I'd be like, well, I mean, I think that you're a little bit rigid. I think that you're a little bit not great at taking criticism. I don't know. Like, I think they're both right. Like, why does anyone have to be wrong? Why do you have to choose a side? That's something that I've never really made sense to me. Like, and I also think that, like, I view my relationships as who I am to that person. I never say, okay, here's another thing that I think is very ENFJ of me. I look at every word I say. I think about the extroverted feeling and the extroverted sensing, and I think, what would I say? Well, how would I feel if this got back to the person? Like, I don't put anything out there unless I'm like totally cool with it going back to the person. Like, for example, even just right now, I had to think for a second about, like, do I feel comfortable talking about the coffee shop? Like, what if people from work find this video and watch it? And then I thought, I don't care if they find it, because it's true. It's what I think. And maybe they might think that I'm talking about them or whatever, but I just, like, I don't say things unless I don't care if they're going to find it. Like, even in all my videos I've done of, like, all the 16 types and my opinions of them, there have been little things I've been like, you know what? Like, how would I should think about what I'm saying. Like, what would my friend think if they found out I was talking about them in this way? But, like, I don't care if they know, and I don't say things unless I stand by them. All right, I'm going to check up on the comments. Benvelin says, as an ENFJ, you have FI as your fifth function, a source of worries, worrying about not being authentic. Again, I don't correlate FI with authenticity. I've never worried about being authentic. I don't see how FI is any more authentic than any other function. I just think that any introverted judging function is going to care a lot about being consistent with itself, which might be authentic to you. The way that I would describe that as my FI being worried is, like, I worry that my personal preferences and my personal emotions are going to limit my outcome and limit my opportunities and limit my relations with people. That's how I would say that. Yeah, Dan says, I think latte art's creative. I wouldn't complain about that. Yeah, like, that's what the NFP said. Like, the NFP's like, why would I be a barista unless I just like, why would I be a barista if I didn't get to do latte art? Anyway. Yeah, someone says, it just seems like you're able to see people's perspectives from every different angle. I see nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I think that really is what extroverted feeling does. But I think that from an FI perspective, where FI has preferences, FI knows who it is against the world. FI is very like me against the world. Like, where do I fit into this world? FE doesn't see it that way. And I think that that's why it could seem really fake, because it might seem like, from an FI point of view, that, like, I am going back and forth between what I believe and now what I don't believe. I would imagine that any FI user would see me agreeing with the ENTP and then also going behind her back and agreeing with the NFP. And that's just not how I see it. I don't have a problem with either of them. I see both of their points. And I also understand how not everyone is going to get along in the same way. And so if an NTP is annoyed with FI, then they're allowed to be annoyed with FI. If an ENFP is annoyed with their TI, then they're allowed to be annoyed with that. Like, who am I to tell either of them that they shouldn't be annoyed? And I don't view it as my FI stance moving from place to place, person to person. I stand with everyone. I stand with the group. I don't pit people against each other. I don't divide. Like, I don't do that. And so, no, it's not going back against what I previously thought to please people. I think if an NFP were to be doing what I do, then that would be them kind of going back on what they said before and people pleasing. And FI users are just as capable of people pleasing. But I think that a lot of times whenever FI users look at FE behaviors through their perspective, they misread what I'm doing as people pleasing in order to be liked, in order to be understood, when really extroverted feeling for me is I have this wider perspective toward understanding everyone and loving everyone. And I just don't see the point in standing firmly in like one perspective or one feeling or one preference when it doesn't matter to me. And Kenny, when you say I think there's a connection between FE and gossiping and talking shit behind people's back, I absolutely do see that connection. I just think that whenever FE users do it, we aren't necessarily trying to hurt anyone. And I would say that, honestly, I think ENTPs and ESTPs are the most notorious for shit talking. I mean, one of my ESTP friends, we went to the same high school and college. One of our biggest activities that we would do together is talk about the people that we both know in like an SE and FE sort of way, because that's really what bonded us. And so I think really the thing that might be kind of shitty about FE and TI is that we can sort of dehumanize the person and talk about them, not in a way that's supposed to be rude to them, but in a way where we're talking about the principles that they stand for in their actions. Like, we'll talk about, oh, people are getting married from high school. I wonder why that is. Like, why are they doing that? Like, it all, like, the gossip, it might sound really harsh from an FI user if they were listening. But if you listen from an FE-TI perspective, you hear what sounds like gossip, but it's really trying to understand why people are the way they are and trying to understand why people are different and trying to understand, how society works. We're like, oh, I hear this person is working here now, or, oh, I hear blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, did you hear so-and-so like hooked up at that party? Like, I'm totally guilty of that. Like, I do that all the time. I love gossip. I mean, whenever I like had a birthday party recently, like I mostly just like invited a lot of my friends over to have a drink. And a lot of them didn't know each other before. And then like after the next day, I talked to my INFJ girlfriend and my ENFP best friend. I was like, okay, let's gossip. What did everyone think about everyone else? Like, I wanted to know who thought what about each person. And in my head, it's not that anyone is right or wrong. It's not that anyone is more deserving of love. It's just that it's fascinating to me. Like, for example, like my INFJ girlfriend said she was overwhelmed by how my ENFP best friend couldn't sit still and was popping from person to person and having really intense one-on-one conversations and wasn't really like warmly open to the group. And my INFJ girlfriend was like sitting in the corner with open body language, trying to make it seem like anyone could come and talk to her if she felt like it. But also like very much observing the entire dynamic and trying to make sense of the entire social dynamic. And that it kind of stressed her out because she couldn't pinpoint a rhyme or reason for the ENFP. That wasn't a insult. That was just like a statement. And I think that a lot of times FI users take TI as like an insult when it's like nobody's saying that you did anything wrong. Like, we're just musing about how the way you operate and the way you process is different than the way this person processes. And also how if two people process differently, then what sort of social result does that make? What? All right, I'm just checking in on the comments. But if anyone knows who linked NE and FI, or NE with creativity and FI with authenticity, let me know the source. I think it might be Personality Hacker. I'm not sure. But that site also thinks that I'm an ENFP, so whatever. Yeah. Ben Villain says, it's a matter of definitions, and FI is more about whether the person's concerned with being an individual and what feels right and what matters to them. That's true. But whenever you are an individual and you stand by, okay, look at how wars start. I mean, look at like the Crusades. I don't know, that's just an example. But like someone really believes in this God and someone really believes in this God. And if they really stand in their beliefs and their authenticity, then it causes a war. Like this is how like FI, when you stand so strongly in who you are and what you believe, it causes you to hate what you are not. If you completely choose who you are, that means that you are also like excluding what you're not. It's not very open. It's not very enveloping. And that's how the extroverted feeling result of war starts. I mean, I was really upset. I might have mentioned this in another video, but like my ENFP best friend, whenever I first started to have a crush on my girlfriend, I was talking to my ENFP friend about it. And I was just like, I'm just really distraught because I don't understand what it means to be bisexual, and I don't understand my own feelings or whatever. And she said something dismissive, and then I was hurt. And then she said something like, look, I don't know why you came to me to talk about being bisexual when I don't relate. And so why wouldn't you talk to someone that would relate? Like, I clearly don't understand what you're going through. And so I don't know what sort of thing you were looking for from me, what sort of emotional reaction you were looking for from me. And as much as I understand, like understanding functions and all that makes me understand her type and makes me understand how her FI came to that conclusion, whenever FE goes to people, we aren't like looking for a specific FI need to be validated the way that FI users do. It's not like I have this deep need that then I'm going to her expecting her to fill that need for me. I'm just venting because I felt like venting and I trust her. And so I wanted to tell her the information about me and my life. And her disinterest in listening, I think, was out of authenticity to her FI, feeling like she wouldn't be able to do it justice. She wouldn't be able to give me the emotional validation that her FI felt that I needed. But to me, I was like, oh, so you think that only people who are LGBT should only talk to people that are LGBT? Well, then how are people that are not LGBT ever going to hear other perspectives? And then I said to her, I was like, okay, like she's Asian American and she cares a lot about those issues. I was like, okay, so what if you only talked to Chinese Americans about your struggle? What if you never told me those struggles? And I think that her telling me the struggle, and whenever anyone shares their experience to an audience that may or may not accept, that is using FE. That is trying to break down the walls, open the barriers, and share with everyone. And FI seems to like almost like build a wall, which LOL, this is why I think that Trump is an ENFP and he just screams FI in so many ways. He wants to build a wall. Like, hello, like that's so FI. Like, that's not a TI practical solution at all. It makes absolutely no sense. We don't have money for it. Like, it's not thought out. It's like absolutely not TI. Like, it just baffles me that people think he uses TI. Like, oh, I don't know, let's just build a wall. That's a purely FI emotional response and a quick, honestly stupid, extroverted thinking, quick solution that isn't going to solve the TI root of the problem at all. But anyway, FI users, they want to almost build a safe bubble around their emotions, not because they're trying to cause division, but because they want to feel comfortable and they want to feel understood. And they also think it's silly for FE users to try and to expect anything different. But FE users are very idealistic and honestly silly when it comes to like sharing with everyone, having their borders completely open, because it lets some negativity in there and it could kind of make what you're saying like less pure, whatever. Yeah, lucid dreamer, I do think he's a narcissist, but I still think that we have to look at like whenever somebody is a narcissist or like has a personality disorder, they're still going to be acting like a super unhealthy version of their type. They aren't going to be just like all of a sudden acting like they have a different type. Exactly. People with BDP have no identity, yet commonly test as INFP. I think anyone can have an identity. I do think that IP types, so people that prefer FI or TI first, they care about identity and they think about their identity more than others, but it doesn't mean that their identity is better. It doesn't mean that they have more of an identity than other people. I mean, I, for one, think that I have a pretty strong identity, even though I'm an EJ. Like, yeah, I'm very focused on the tribe, but like, I like, doesn't mean that I don't have an identity within it. Someone says, I find a lot of gossipers breed fear and judgment. They may not intend this, but it's important that they understand this. Yeah, I definitely can sense that's true. And you might have typed this earlier. I can't see it, but I'm assuming that you use FI, Euro, Lamb. But I do think the FI root of why people gossip is probably due to fear or something like that. Maybe judgment. But the TI that gossipers are cognizant of and conscious of is that they're trying to understand. But the FI root is that they might be trying to quickly feel like they're better than someone. So I'm going to take this down, even if this looks like a mess. I don't really care. Whatever. This is my FE authenticity. Whatever. I feel like when FI users gossip, it's like a secret. They don't want the other person to find out. And I just can't relate to that. I can't imagine saying anything that and then being surprised whenever it gets back to the person. And I think that that is very extroverted feeling of me because it's extroverted feeling of me because I think about how ideas spread emotionally. And Zubir says, I have an INFJ friend in the LGBTQ classification. Although I'm not in that classification, I can use my FI to hold emotional space for her and relate. Absolutely. I should have clarified that earlier. I'm not trying to say that no FI user can do that, but I do think that like we all use all 8 functions, as I've mentioned before. I do think that extroverted feeling is the function that holds space for different opinions, holds space for everyone. And FI is sort of looking for their people, their like-minded people, their group. And I think that, honestly, there's a lot of FI going on in politics these days. And I think that's why there's lots of division, but also like there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with people wanting like a safe space. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to find their people. Because in a world with so many different types of people, like there's nothing wrong with like wanting to feel safe. Like, you know, like, oh, we all get it here. We aren't all gonna, and just the whole concept of borders in general. Like, I mean, you lock your door at night, don't you? You know, like there's nothing wrong with like having borders or having boundaries or like locking things that are precious to you in. I'm just trying to explain like the utility of extroverted feeling, because it's not always like dumb. It's not just like fake. Like there's reasons for it. And I think that a lot of ENFJs don't take the time to explain how it works, like the way I am, because you know what? It hurts. It's hard for me to explain the way that my introverted thinking processes all of this, and the reasons why I care so much about giving to people and about being nice to people. Like, you guys might think it's fake if I love your comment, or I say, oh my gosh, thank you for the comment, or anything like that, or if I like your comment on my Facebook group. But that's like as genuine as I possibly can't. Like, whenever you are trying to create change on a mass scale, or wherever you're trying to emotionally, whenever you are thinking about emotions on a grand scale, you can't give all of yourself to every person. You have to, and maybe that seems diluted to an FI user, but it seems like FI users, they give their full selves to people that like 100% understand them or whatever. But I want to give myself to everyone. I want to love everyone. I want to create a world where everyone has that sort of basic human respect with one another, because I think that is how fights are going to be less common. Understanding is going to be more common. I want to create a world where people can hear each other's differences and not start a war over it. And if more people had the perspective that I had while gossiping and hearing like, oh, this person hates this person or whatever, like, oh, she's mad that she does latte art and she's mad that she's hypercritical. If more people were able to use extroverted feeling the way that I do, and just like observe the conflict and like understand why it's happening and honor those people's choices and preferences and let them coexist, then that is how like to create a society with like not as many wars. So what FI views as fake, FE views as, you know, even more real than anything that FI could probably offer. Like the same as like how, for example, like I think that Carl Jung's cognitive functions is very TI. It's like this very deep philosophy. But then the big five is very TE. It's just like, oh, do you have this trait? Yes or no. And it doesn't really tell you as much meaningful information, but at least gets the job done and it gets people talking and stuff like that. And it's not the best theory in the world. In fact, I really don't like it. But sometimes TE gets the job done, and you just gotta let it get the job done. And I just don't really like how FI users are so. The reason why they're so incorrect with the motive of extroverted feeling, just really, to put it simply, is because they don't understand the motive. Because they don't have introverted thinking. So they don't understand that what I'm doing works. What I'm doing makes sense. What I'm doing is actually going to practically create harmony. And I'm not just being a dick. I'm not just gossiping. I'm not just being fake. Like, I actually am trying to apply the principle of understanding differences in people. So, and also trying to put the needs of the group above my own personal validation. So I'm going to catch up on some of the comments. Someone says, or Dan says, personally, I hate gossip if it's shit talking someone for their looks or how weird they are. That type of gossip just pisses me off, especially if you're doing it in front of the person. I absolutely agree. I hate that. Someone says that they think SJWs and feminazis, which I really hate that word because wanting equal rights for women should never be compared to Nazis. Like, it's just ridiculous. I understand, like, calling them extremists, but wanting equal rights, killing people, like, not the same. I don't necessarily agree that they seem to be FJs. Oh, you said they could be FJs and FPs. I would probably consider myself, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm very radical, but I also am like understanding of other views, and I really hate whenever people do this thing where they create echo chambers and they just socially, like, they just like publicly shame people that are problematic and they just cut them off. Like, I really hate that, and I actually think that that is a product of FI trying to keep people feeling safe and keep people feeling validated and keep people feeling like they're only surrounded by people that are going to understand them. And I mean, I think that there's a place for, I mean, to get political, like, there's a place for safe spaces. And I definitely, like, believe in that. And, like, I'm not against safe spaces. Oh my gosh, I'm giving up on this. There's a time and a place for a safe space. But my extroverted feeling, and me personally, I'm looking at the long term. How are we going to get along with one another? I guess if I even think about it, what if everyone in the United States, like everyone that voted for Trump, lived in these states, and everyone that voted for Hillary lived in these states? Even if that was the case, even if we completely suctioned ourselves off, and we kind of do that with people that live in cities and people that don't live in cities, but like, even if that was the case, where there were like a Democratic government over here and a Republican government over here, these two countries would hate each other. Like, we all live on the same globe at the end of the day. And so if you can't learn to understand why someone thinks differently than you and respect that they think differently than you, then there's going to be war. And I'm interested in solving the long-term solution. And so that's why, even though I am like very liberal and I have been called an SJW, it's not really a term that I like to call myself because I think that it's kind of patronizing to people that are trying to create change. I don't always agree with all of the principles in the way that people, fight for their causes, but I do agree with those causes. And so, but I think that my critique of a lot of the way that things that people do would be, I guess, FI sectioning themselves off into a little group of only people that agree with them and not challenging their worldview. And I guess the FE, on the FE aspect, what I really don't like, that I guess fellow FE users probably do, is like public shaming. Like, oh my God, this person did this thing, put it on social media, and then just like wait for their followers to just like completely cut them out of their whatever. I don't like either of those things. And so anyway, there's something else I want to address. Kenny says, the thing is, if someone is gossiping to me about someone, they're likely to do the same about me to someone else. That would be true if you were talking about an FI user who is they morally feel okay about shit talking, which means they're going to do it to everyone. But actually, that's not the case for FE users, because normally if they're talking about someone else to you, that means that they feel comfortable with you and that they like you and they have nothing to critique you on, and they're trying to bond with you. So you can have your own opinion about whether or not you think that's a good thing to do. I just know that a lot of FE users, if they feel comfortable shit talking people to you, then that means that they like you. It does not mean that they're likely to do that about you. So I think I didn't do a great job at directly addressing the question about is FE fake. Oh, there was another thing I wanted to mention is like, when I went to VidCon, which is an online video conference, I was chatting with some FJs and TPs about how impractical it was that the creators were, that the creator ticket was in a completely different building. And we were just like, isn't this conference supposed to be about creators? Like, how come it's so inefficient for us to go to our panels? Like, we can't go from this panel to all the other panels very easily because we have to walk like 10 minutes. Like, that doesn't really make sense, and it just really shows that they aren't preferencing. They don't prefer us. We kept complaining about it, and like, there was this guy that said he typed as an INTJ, and he seems very INTJ to me. We didn't talk much, but he was like rolling his eyes every time we gossiped about that. And I think that, you know, I was realizing that, like, I could feel that he was annoyed. And I was just like, why is he so annoyed? And then I was like, you know what? I think that he thinks that we just are being Debbie Downers. Like, I don't think that he realizes, like, what we're talking about. Like, I think that he doesn't get it. And that we're talking about the idea and the principles of thing. We aren't, it's not going to inhibit our ability to have a good time. And I could tell that he was sort of thinking, like, why are you guys gossiping? Why can't you just have a good time and enjoy it for what it is? But, like, FE users can enjoy it for what it is and also critique it for what it critique things. I hate whatever TE user came up with the phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because no, like, if it's not broke, like, you should fix it now before it breaks. Like, that's my philosophy. But yeah, I guess I didn't do a great job at answering the question directly, but I really hope that by the end of this video, you understand about a little bit more about extroverted feeling. And if you guys like this sort of video, please comment and let me know, because it was very easy for things to flow out. And so I might do this more to, like, address a certain topic, because I never really go into things prepared. I like to just say what comes to mind, and I feel like it's, like, very extroverted feeling to be like, what needs to be addressed? What does the audience need to hear? And then it just, like, comes up, or just, I think of it. But, I don't know. Thank you for watching this video. And if you have any questions, comment below. And I honestly feel like perhaps I will have to do more videos on the subject even, because I feel like this is more of a chit chat, and, like, I didn't really quickly or precisely address the ways that I don't think that FE is fake. But you know what? Whatever. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.